This is the Cedar Creek Church Living It Out podcast, a midweek reminder where we discuss key takeaways and principles from the weekend message to help you live out the truth that you matter.
Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Living It Out podcast, a weekly podcast to help remind you that you matter and help you live out that truth throughout the week. My name is Casey, and I am so pumped to be back here in the studio with Sarah Bucher today, and we're going to have a fun conversation. But before we do that, this weekend, Sarah, we obviously continued our series talking all about what it looks like to be present with kids and families. It's more than a first, just a phase. Don't miss it. I always want to say it's more than a phase, but that's not the right series name. It's just a phase. Close enough, right? But as we're in the series, we're talking about families. I would love for you listeners to think about this too. What is something that as a family, a rhythm or a routine or something that you just remember very vividly about your childhood? Maybe it was a vacation you guys took together or something along those lines. What comes to mind for you, Sarah?
Yeah, for me, really the first thing I thought of was camping. We that was our vacation as a family.
Like tent camping?
We had one of those pop-up.
Oh, those
like
are fun.
Flip-up
Yeah,
things. So it felt like a tent.
Those are great.
A glamorous tent. And I mean, that's how we vacationed. So all the time throughout the summer, that's what we would do. And so many family members.
Did you guys go anywhere cool? Or did you go to one spot? And
we traveled around like the local, states. We never went crazy far, but it always had to have a pool.
Oh, okay.
We weren't like roughing.
So you're not like backpacking in the woods.
No.
I just imagine all the parents like listening when they hear that. Like we went camping as a kid, and when I think of camping, I think tent
There's
camping.
a wide spectrum.
Yeah, totally. It's the spectrum of camping.
Yes.
It's like you have like cabin camping, and then you have like sleeping in the back of your car.
We were middle of the road.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well,
How about
camping
you?
is fun. For me, so my parents were split up. So growing up, we would always do like two different kinds of like summer trips. One with my mom, one with my dad. My mom we always go to Florida for a couple of reasons. She had a friend there, so we'd stay with her, and free stay when you have 3 kids is great. So we'd always go there and swim in the pool in the ocean. That was always fun. I have great memories, which I'm sure many of you do too, being a kid, going to the beach with my friends, my mom's friends, going to Disney. We went when I was like 12, which was super fun. So I feel like kids remembering Disney, that's always a great experience, super fun, just like magical experience for all of us. So I'm sure you listening probably have some memories. If you want to pause and just, if you're with people, to reflect on that a little bit, because there are so many moments throughout our childhood that if we don't stop and go back and reflect, we might forget them, but they do mean a lot.
Yep.
And that's kind of what the series is all about. It's about creating moments, more being aware of the phase that your kids or the kids around you, the families around you are in. And so this weekend, Lauren Snyder, Ben's wife, if you don't know who Lauren is our executive director of family ministries. Did I get that
ministries.
Right? Of ministries, not just family ministries.
Adults,
of ministries.
kids, and students.
Adult, kids, and students. But the big piece of that we're talking about for this series is kids and students. And so Sarah and I get to play a part in that team. And I loved what Lauren kind of led with this weekend. Sarah, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about, she talked about this equation for families, for creating these moments like we just talked about a second ago.
Yeah, and I think her heart was, we want to create family legacies that we remember, something worth remembering, which means we want it to be good. Like, really, we want to create good memories and good families. And so this equation was rhythm plus relationships, that when you really think about those two buckets, you can probably filter, if you reflect back on your family, a lot of those important milestone memories probably either had to do with a rhythm or with a relationship.
When you think back to that, again, for you and people listening, feel free to reflect on this. I think reflection is super important and helpful and healthy. Do you have any rhythms when you were a kid that you can remember that maybe you even implement? I don't have kids, but Sarah, you have 2 boys. Is there some of those routines that maybe in rhythms that you kind of transferred over to your own kids?
Yeah. The biggest thing I can think of is we're a big tradition family. So holidays were a really big deal for us. Birthdays, any sort of celebration. Same. And within each holiday or celebration were traditions. So it's exhausting to my husband because there are special things.
Well, that's fun too.
Everything.
And like even thinking about marriage, and you can keep going in a second, but like 2 different families coming together and creating your own traditions, like there's some tension that obviously happens during, Jen and I have experienced that too. But what specifically?
Well, I think what's been neat for me is, so like an example for Christmas, my grandpa would always read us this story called Jimmy Moore. And like, long story short, it's this sweet, sweet story about this boy, and he doesn't get what he wants for Christmas, and it's like the real meaning of Christmas and all this stuff. But my grandpa will read it every single year, and we have pictures of every single year of all the grandkids circled around my grandpa.
That's awesome.
So now my boys
awesome.
get to sit on my grandpa's lap. And so like we've continued these traditions, and they're rhythms that really matter and make special memories.
Totally. I think for me, when I think back to rhythms as a kid, I remember mornings. I remember lots of the mornings, and I remember seeing my mom reading or journaling in the morning. I always remember that. That was part of her rhythm and routine. And I remember my grandma always coming over as my mom would leave to go to work, and we would wait for my grandma to take us to school. But one of the rhythms and routines, this is so dumb, but it's so funny. My grandma always had a pack of orange Tic Tacs in her car. And orange
grandma with Tic Tacs.
Dude, but orange Tic Tacs they don't work because it's like Tic Tacs are supposed to help your breath, but they're orange. So like who wants to go around smelling like oranges? It's like orange mint. They're gross. Have you had an orange Tic Tac recently? They're disgusting. But when I was in like 5th grade, 6th grade, having those in the car, I was in charge of dispersing them to my sisters. And so I'd give them each one and take like 5 myself. And I loved them. But that, again, dumb little routine and rhythm, but I remember it.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily create this huge legacy, but it is a little thing.
Endearing with your relationship with your grandma, though.
Absolutely, it did. Something I'll always remember is those car rides with my grandma, or my friends coming in the car with my grandma and them taking Tic Tacs too. So again, just a small thing. But Lauren hit on this pretty extensively this weekend on the rhythms part of things. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think for some of us listening, though, maybe you heard Lauren, and if you're anything like me, you get overwhelmed when someone talks about all the different rhythms that they have in their life. Yeah. Because you think about, I want to do that. Like, I'd love to do that. And then you think about how grand that feels and how unrealistic that feels. And that becomes like, okay, well, I guess I just won't do anything then. Right. Yeah, and you just become, stagnant and don't move. I love what Lauren said this weekend. We were just talking about this. Would you maybe just unpack a little bit of how do you step into that? How do you start that?
Yeah. What I loved is Lauren took a really big concept and brought it down to like realistic expectations for our daily lives. Right. So she talked about things that each and every one of us do every day. Mm-hmm. Like we wake up in the morning, we drive in our cars.
Yep. Hopefully brush your teeth first.
Yes, that's right. We eat meals and we go to bed. Yeah. Like all of us do that.
Those are natural
so the
things
idea is look at these natural rhythms throughout your day. And her thought was like stack a habit that's helpful. If your family is one that gets up and has breakfast in the morning, like what if you just prayed together before you all went your separate ways, or use that intentional drive time to have a conversation that might be a little more awkward at another time. Or I know something we do is at dinner time every night, we go around the table and we ask the question, what was the best part of your day?
I love that question. So fun.
And we've been doing it enough to where we now just sit down and it's who wants to go first?
Oh, that's so fun.
Like the boys just know.
That's great.
And it's a rhythm and it allows them to reflect and we get to thank God for all the good things. And I think if you just find a way to enhance those already everyday moments, they become extra special.
One of the words that I'll use often with our team, one of our teams here at church, is the word intentional. And I think that word is so true even when it comes to all the areas of your life, specifically when you think about kids or families. It's just taking those moments, like you said, that you already do and just being a little more intentional with them. Yeah. I love what you said about asking what your favorite part of the day was. That's one of my favorite questions I ask kids here on the weekend when they show up. What was the best part of your week and the worst part of your week? I think Lauren said Ben calls them boos and yays.
Same idea.
Super fun. So those are little things. If you're listening right now, like what moment or what rhythm do you already have that you can implement something that's going to help engage your family in some of those intentional moments?
I even think about, if you don't have kids or if your children have grown and maybe you're a grandparent or you're an aunt and uncle or whatever, like I think you can still do this. Think about the opportunities you have with those nieces and nephews, grandkids, and make that moment special. So maybe every time you go to grandma's house, you do blank, or you have this, or you ask this, you have this conversation, and you can still create those rhythms.
I don't have kids, and I said that on the weekend. Like all the kids that are here in a way are kind of like my kids. So when they're here on the weekend, I love to ask them like, what was your favorite part of your week? It's fun, but it also is a rhythm, and they know that question's coming when I see them. Yeah. One of the things that even as we're having this conversation, I can reflect on. I mentioned this to you earlier. My aunt on our birthdays used to pick us up and give us $50 to go spend. 50. That's a lot of money for like generous. A 6-year. I know, right? She had a good job. No, so she would pick us up and she'd take us to wherever we wanted to go. We could buy whatever we wanted up to that $50 limit. Yeah. And then we get to go to dinner wherever we wanted afterwards. And that was just something we knew was coming on our birthdays. Yep. So Lauren mentioned that too this weekend, that she has a friend who does something similar. And so I don't know. I think for some of us who don't have kids and maybe listening to this and going, this isn't applicable to me, but it totally is. Because even as we transition into this next part, we have rhythms and then we also have relationships. Yeah. Lauren mentioned this, like the bigger your family is, the better it is. Yep. That doesn't mean biological family all the time. Yeah, right. They can mean that, but it also can mean aunts and uncles and friends and cousins and all those people who you call your cousin but isn't actually your cousin. We all have those people in our life. And so as we step into that though, I love what Lauren kind of did, was she brought the story of David, and you're probably familiar with David and Goliath. We hear all the grand things that David did, but the process of him being selected, like that was not necessarily like this, oh, super simple. There's David. He's going to be the next king.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that in context of what Lauren mentioned this weekend.
Yeah. So back to that equation, rhythm and relationship. So that relationship piece is the idea that there's a ton of value in bringing other voices and other influences into your kid's life. And with the example of David, his dad just didn't see it. Not because he didn't think David was valuable, but because he had what, 7 boys? Like, he had a lot going on.
It's a lot of kids.
Like, that's a lot of kids. So he couldn't see everything.
Sure.
But Samuel came in with God's prompting and was like, no, there's something in this kid that we're missing. Mm-hmm. And as a parent, we just don't see it all.
Yeah.
I loved Lauren's phrase this weekend. She said, we're not enough. We're not enough for our kids. We just can't be.
Right.
And in a way that's like, oh, but I want to be enough.
Right,
but
right.
also it's the reminder that it's so important to get other people around you.
Totally.
So whether it is a coach, whether it is a teacher, a grandparent, a cousin, a friend, aunt, uncle, like those voices that would tell the child the same thing you would. The trusted voice.
Yeah.
And so often, especially as kids get older, like they're gonna want to talk to other people more
yes.
than
I
you.
love what did Lauren say this weekend? She says to her kids, there's gonna come a point where there's gonna be something you don't want to talk about with me.
Right.
Who is the other person?
That's
to give your kids the permission to like select who those other individuals are. Like, what a great, healthy conversation for them to be a part of as a 9-10-year-old, whatever age that is. I love that. I thought that was super cool.
And how humble.
Yeah.
To be able to realize, you know what, I may not be the person that you need right now,
right.
but I definitely want to make sure you have
I was just going to say that too. I think that the humility that takes, and one of the things that's really cool for me, being in the church as long as I have been, I've gotten to have people who are not my family be a part of my family. And now as I've gotten older, it's cool to see people like you with your 2 boys, or the Snyders with all their kids, or any, Alex and his girls and his little boy, being able to step into that and to see you guys have that posture of like Jenna and Casey are going to come over and babysit, and we trust them to be there through dinner. They're going to put the kids to bed. They're going to stay the night. Like we've been able to do that. And it's been cool to see someday for us. Hopefully we have some high school students who are really connected and involved, and we'd love to get them.
That's a neat perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
I think too, sometimes it takes another voice saying the exact same thing,
Yeah.
Like,
it's totally true.
Our boys are little. They're 5 and 3. So we could say, it's very important to share, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, yeah. And then they go to church and they're like, hey, we learned
to share.
Sharing
You're
is
like, you did you? Huh?
great.
Wow.
Whatever it takes, man.
That's so funny. I remember being a high school student coming home and telling my mom I'm learning things. She's like, I did that.
We talked
about that.
Right.
That is
right.
very true. So the idea that bigger families are better, and again, it doesn't mean you need to go and have 15 kids. It just means identify the people that you're surrounding yourself with, your circle, your family, and let people in. And I think like you said earlier, it does take a level of humility to say, I can't do this all by myself.
Yeah.
And that's challenging. So maybe for some of you today, that's the step you need to take.
Yeah.
Lauren talked a little bit about this idea of my top 5, really just a framework
Yep.
to take a step into who are the people. I love the idea of including your kids in that conversation if they're a little bit older, especially for me, I get to work with a lot of high school students, and they appreciate being a part of the conversation, being a part of the planning, being a part of this is what I'm going to do. And even for younger kids too. Lauren has obviously kids under 10 years old, and they're having the same kinds of conversations. Like, who's someone you want to talk to about that? I absolutely love that. Have you guys, I don't know if, how old's Jack? 6?
Jack's 5.
5. He just turned 5, right?
Yeah.
How does that look for you guys? Like, what are you planning on? I guess 5's a weird age, right? Because he's not to the point yet where he probably talks to you about most things or everything.
Right. I hope.
Yeah.
No, he does. I know that my husband's brother, is another great male leader in his life. He's got 2 great grandpas.
Yeah, that's true.
Fantastic aunts, fantastic babysitters.
Yeah.
So we're doing our best to build that village.
You guys are setting that up. That's kind of what I was getting at. You're setting that up.
We're trying.
So there's still things you can do even if you can't just sit down and have the conversation with your kid because they're older. Maybe they're a little younger.
Yeah.
Great. Set that framework up. I remember my mom doing that. And maybe it wasn't intentional because she was trying to create something, but she recognized that she needed more than just herself. So we had so many friends. I think of the Dotsons from the West Toledo campus.
Yes.
Like, they were like I know where their house key is at. I eat their food.
Oh boy.
I go over there. Oh my gosh. Like their house is my house as much as it is their own kids. And I love that. And I think that you guys are creating that for your kids. So for people listening, maybe that's what you need to do today. One of the things that Lauren left with was just start somewhere. And I think in this podcast, we try to say there's living it out can sound so unrealistic because it seems like this big grand thing I have to step into. Mm-hmm. But just one thing. Lauren mentioned one relationship and one rhythm. Pick one rhythm and pick one relationship to lean into.
And I would say too, Casey, sometimes it's that top 5 for your kids.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's making sure that you're healthy and
Yeah,
you're where you need to
totally,
be as the
totally.
parent or the grandparent.
Right.
So do you have somebody?
Yeah.
Do you have somebody that you're talking to, whether
Right.
it's a spouse, whether it's a friend, hopefully a couple of people
Yeah.
that you can go to when things are just not great or when you're really excited about something. For us to model that
Yeah.
is really
I
important.
was just going to say empty cups can't pour, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
true even for parenting.
Right.
You can't parent your kids well if you're not being led well or have a place to process
Yep.
all the stuff that's going on in your life.
Yep.
And there's probably a whole nother conversation.
I know,
that
right?
We could probably have. But with all that being said, thanks for hanging out with us today, Sarah.
Yes,
I
thanks for
appreciate it.
having me.
Yeah. So for all of you listening, again, this is the Living Out podcast. And so our hope is you take like one thing and just take one step in doing it. So one rhythm, one relationship.
Yep.
Maybe it's a cousin, uncle, friend, whatever it may be. Lean into that relationship in one rhythm, whether it's mealtime, drive times. Lauren gave a bunch of examples this weekend. I usually give a nod to this, but if you haven't yet, go back, listen to the weekend message.
Good.
I hope you realize that halfway through this. You probably should go back and listen. But great content. Lauren did a great job of giving so many good examples of how we all can lean into the phases that the kids that we have and the kids around us are in. All right, I've got some outro announcements here that I'm supposed to hit. So the first one is we have 2 more weeks of the series.
Yep.
I believe this weekend is Ben, or is it an interview with Ben? And
Yep.
then we have some guests coming in to do some interviews, some video.
Yeah.
I think
talking about family hacks.
Yes.
Some listeners have been sending in questions like, what do we do about this? Or my family's struggling with this.
Love
so we're
it.
going to answer those questions.
Those will be great. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Perfect.
yeah.
Love it. I know Rick and Jill Duchesne just shot a video too, so they're
Yes.
going to be great. I'm sure they have some great advice out there. Super fun. And then our summer groups semester starts June 5th, and the directory opens this weekend, May 22nd. So if you are not connected in a group, if you'd like to lead a group, you can go to cedarcreek.tv/groups for all the information there. And we'd love to help you get connected, because groups are one of the places where we can grow our family, because we meet people and friends and find freedom. Just super fun. So thanks again, Sarah, for hanging out with us today. Again, this is a Living It Out podcast. We hope you are reminded that you matter and that you can help live out that, we can help you live out that truth throughout the week. Thanks so much. Have a great week.